real quickly, for those that don't know, I predicted that the Thunder were going to win in a competitive series. I didn't necessarily give a exact game prediction because I thought the Thunder could win in 5 or they could win in 7. So I wasn't really sure what to make of the Thunder winning, but I did say there was that real chance that Denver could win in 7. So the game 7 prediction is at least a lock. Thunder winning in 5, not so much. They did never really dominate to that degree, and that's off Denver playing a tough game 7 or 7-game series. Game 7 wasn't so tough for them against the Clippers, but a 7-game series against the Clippers, who have way more depth than the Nuggets do, and playing the Thunder, who have way more depth than the Nuggets do. So, to start off with the Nuggets' chances, they have a very easy angle that Nikola Jokic can just be far and away the best player for Game 7. And if he is, assuming that Jamal Murray doesn't crap the bed like he's liable to do from time to time, and nobody for the Nuggets is abysmal, they win the game. It's as simple as that. But there's more angles than just Jokic going nuclear. But on the same sort of agenda, there is the chance that Jamal Murray goes off for, say 30 something. And that's very possible as well. Murray is all over the place, as he typically is. He has games where he's, unable to score basically at all. And then he has games where he can't miss. So that is very dangerous for the Thunder because I would much rather just have a guy that is going to get, maybe 25 than a guy that could go for 40 and basically single-handedly win the Nuggets game 7. So Jamal Murray, very dangerous. Of course, Nikola Jokic, very dangerous, might just be the best player in the league. For reference, I did think Shea had the ever so slightly better regular season than Jokic, but I really saw the angle for either of them. And with that said, uh, Shea has the better numbers this series, but I still think it's pretty darn close because when you look at the defense being played on Jokic versus the defense that's being played on Shea, it's night and day. SGA is oftentimes just being guarded by Christian Brown, and that's the extent of it. In game 6, there was a lot more aggressive defense played on Shea, and he still came through. So it's not to say that he can't score against more complicated, advanced, difficult coverages, but he hasn't been seeing the same defenses that Jokic has because Jokic, the reason his numbers are, sort of down, particularly notable with the assist to turnover, where he's not even at 2-1. He's barely at a positive with 34 assists to 26 turnovers. It's just incredible defense by the Thunder. So the fact that Jokic is scoring at all, scoring pretty efficiently with 58% true shooting and still scoring 30 a game, getting 3 offensive rebounds, playing solid defense, even though no one would ever say that, it's remarkable because Jokic is continually getting doubled by 2 great defenders. There's always lots of coverage in the paint. They still find a way to cut off easy passes for him. So a lot of the things Jokic gets in the assist department is really hard earned. So Jokic, though statistically not playing better than SGA, might be playing better in the series just because he's doing it through a lot more difficulty. And with that said, the Nuggets have the additional angle of, say Jokic and Murray don't go nuclear, they still do have the chance to just outplay, particularly down the stretch, the Thunder, which is a bit odd because, again, the Nuggets have no depth. They barely have five guys, and the Thunder have, like, just the most depth you're going to see in the NBA, where they have legitimately like 10 guys that could be in their closing lineup. So it's a bit odd that the Nuggets are winning down the stretch typically. Not the case so much in game six, where it wasn't just, the down the stretch stuff that won the Nuggets the game. They were pretty good all the way through, but in large part, it does seem like Denver has the edge in those cases despite no depth, just because they are a bit more experienced and they do have a more defined closing five. So there's definitely angles for the Nuggets. You have the two nuclear games from Jokic and Murray that are really possible, but then you also just have, playing a cleaner game where Jokic is coming off an 8 assist to 1 turnover game in game six. Maybe he's finally cracking the defense a little bit. Who's to say? That's really difficult because they played so amazingly against Jokic to this point. But if they execute, just at a higher level than the Thunder, which is a really general thing to say, but if Jokic plays well, if Murray plays all right, and if the support of Brown and Gordon is there, it doesn't necessarily matter too much who the fifth guy is, because that four is just so good and it all fits together so nicely. If Michael Porter Jr., say, can hit some shots, which he has not this series, then that is just a very lethal five-man lineup that you do not want to play if you're anybody basically in history. So the Nuggets definitely have some avenues. And this is a terrible situation, really, for the Thunder, where you just don't want to get into a game where, you can play really well, but not have a guy that's scoring maybe 40 like Jokic or Murray can, or, just being in a close game where it really could go either way, and the team that is a bit more experienced might have the edge. So this is very worrying for the Thunder. As for the angle for the Thunder, it is as easy as one of the paths for them to win is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going nuclear. If SGA plays at his best and everybody else just plays fine, there's a very real chance the Thunder win. So there is that angle. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been great in this series. Not always super, super consistent, I guess is the best way to put it, but his numbers are great, which shows that he has been dominant when he's been at his best. And when he's at his, not best, he's still productive in other ways. He's always being a good defender, and he's either setting up his teammates or scoring basically every game. So he's always giving you something on offense. He has 2 offensive rebounds a game as well, which is nice. Which I should say too, the Nuggets, they've been pretty great on the glass, at least parts of them. That's another thing that could help them down the stretch, because you have Jokic with 3 offensive rebounds, Gordon with 4 a game. That is absurd. And basically everybody else has 1 or more for the Nuggets. So there's lots of offensive rebounds going around for both teams, but that adds some variance as well, which variance is the last thing you want if you're the Thunder. If you can just get a very clean game for both teams, you feel good. But, if there's lots of offensive rebounds going around, that's going to benefit the Nuggets. If, it's just a close game, that's going to benefit the Nuggets, because the easiest way for the Thunder to win is just to overwhelm the Nuggets with their greater depth and overall greater talent. And If it ends up being close, that becomes very, very finicky. So for the Thunder, though, you do have SGA going nuclear, which is a very reasonable thing to expect. It's, right up there with Jokic going nuclear. But then things fall off a little bit for the Thunder because whereas Jamal Murray has that real chance, even though he hasn't been super efficient and hasn't been a great playmaker in this series, Jamal Murray still liable to give you 30 plus at any given moment. Jalen Williams, the good one, or typically good one, has not been good this series. That's very on the forefront, especially because game 6 was so bad. It was like 3 for 16 or something like that, shooting wise. I think he had 8 points or 6 points. It was bad. Jalen Williams doesn't really get the benefit of the doubt in this situation, for better or for worse, because he doesn't have a great resume in the playoffs to this point. He's fallen off quite a bit, in fact, from being great in the regular season to more downs than ups, honestly, in the playoffs. It's not to say he's always bad. There's been, some in-betweens there, but, the scoring is the biggest thing at the end of the day, and the scoring just has not been there for him through most of the playoffs. And especially in this series where he's averaging 17, that doesn't seem too different from what you would expect. He averaged 22 in the regular season, so 5-point difference is pretty darn noticeable, but, you could live with 17 from Williams, especially if you get, some increased support elsewhere. But the real thing that's killing him is 45% true shooting. That is so bad. The average for a point guard through power forward is 57%. So 12 percentage points below the average for your number 2 guy. That's not good. Williams still productive, getting you an offensive rebound. Basically everybody in this series, not just for the Nuggets, everybody in this series that is, a legit player, aside from Caruso, who is a very legit player, but everybody's getting an offensive rebound or more, seemingly, a game. Jalen Williams with the 1 offensive rebound, awesome assist to turnover ratio, 35 assists to 9 turnovers. That's amazing. Still playing good defense, helps the defense stay super difficult for anybody to score on. So he's helping in other ways, but he's got to score. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if he's not scoring, he's got to at least be somewhat efficient. He can't be at this 45% true shooting. That is just not going to cut it at all. So that is a very worrying thing for the Thunder, is that obviously it's not a one-to-one, but they don't have the path as open for just their second star being great, because Murray, like I've said tons of times this video, he can go off. Williams, I'm not so sure. So you do have kind of canceling out. I would still give the edge a little bit to Jokic, just because I do think, especially off a great game 6 and I think game 5 where he had like 40, that is, a sign that he could be breaking through this defense a little bit, which wouldn't be too surprising because for as historically great as this Thunder defense is, Jokic is a historically great offensive player as well. And generally, great offense trumps great defense. So, I'm not going to be too surprised if Jokic is finally breaking through in just the right time for the Nuggets. So, with that said, I think SGA and Jokic cancel out for the most part. I do give a slight edge to Jokic, but where I really give the Nuggets an edge is with Jamal Murray over Jalen Williams for the number 2, which I did not expect. I expected Williams to continue his dominance from the regular season, being the better player than Murray. Williams, to me, was about like the 13th best player in the league. Murray, I didn't think was top 20. So I thought there was a pretty clear difference between the two, but Murray has been way better in the playoffs so far, scoring 5 more points on 9 percentage points better efficiency, not being the assist to turnover god that Jalen Williams is, but at the end of the day, scoring is the most important thing, and Murray's doing that at a much higher level. So the other angles, though, for the Thunder are just that one, they really suffocate the Nuggets defensively. If they hold down Jokic and Murray, that's the key thing is and they hold them down to just not great games. I think the Thunder do win because I think at the end of the day, SGA gives them such a good floor for offense. And they do have lots of other guys that can contribute. Maybe get the ball out of Jalen Williams' hands a little bit. So, you know, if it does become a defensive struggle, the Nuggets have shown that they can be great defensively, but overall, I'm taking the Thunder in that scenario. And that's basically what it comes down to for the Thunder is if they're going to be able to hold down the Nuggets. Because if you don't have your number two scoring at a high level, you need obviously somebody else to step it up. And I just don't see it for the Thunder like that. That is the one sort of weakness for them as a team is they have a very defined number one, a pretty darn defined number two. Then lots of guys could be the number three, which is good. You have lots of, options for number three, but it means if your number two isn't performing, you really fall off a cliff. And I don't trust Chet to be a number two. If anything, I think Hartenstein might be the better big right now because Chet is not able to hold up against Jokic defensively. That's why they always have Hartenstein or the other Jalen Williams out there to help with the physicality that Holmgren just lacks at the moment. Chet's still a great defender, but just not, you know, against the most important player in this series being Jokic. So I don't trust Holmgren to be the number two. I seemingly don't trust Jalen Williams to be the number two. Holmgren is just not great this series. He's averaging 14 on 54% true shooting. Centers about 61% true shooting on average. Hartenstein, 3 less points at 11, but 59% true shooting, so he's about where you would want. Chet has more turnovers than assists, getting 2 offensive rebounds. That's good. Hartenstein has 3 offensive rebounds, though, and a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So I do think Hartenstein's just playing better, basically at all facets. If he's scoring a point or two more, I don't think it's even up for debate, but I think I'll take the 3 less points over Holmgren for basically being better at everything else in Hartenstein's case. So the angles, I think, just numerically are less there for the Thunder, believe it or not, even though they're a superior team, I still think. This is really tough. And I think you could probably realize I don't feel great about either prediction. And if anything, it seems like I'm leaning a little bit more towards the Nuggets just because they do have more angles of, player A or player B goes off and then just a close game that leads to them. But I do think still at like 53% type of confidence, if I have to pick, I'm going with the Thunder. I know that's not very convincing since I do think there's more angles for the Nuggets to win, but I think the angles for the Thunder to win are a bit easier because I think we can count on SGA and Jokic being great. I don't think that's really, a hot take. I think we can expect both of them to be at or near their best. Murray is the real wild card. If he's at his best, that's a Nuggets win. But if he's at anything less than his best, which is very, likely, I would say it's more likely than not that he's not at his best, then the Thunder win. And, if Jalen Williams just completely stinks up the joint again, that's, another Nuggets win. But I don't think that's particularly likely that he's as bad as he was in game 6. So I just think there's easier avenues for the Thunder, even though there might be less ones. I just think at the end of the day, with so many good players for the Thunder, there is a really good chance that they get a starting 5 or a finishing 5 rather that can close out as well or better than Denver's can or pretty close to it and just have much better depth on top of that, which obviously you're playing your guys basically the entire game in a game 7, but at the end of the day, they might burn out a little bit in the Nuggets case because they're going to have to play basically every minute. And the Thunder, they're going to get some rest, so I think they're going to be at 100%, whereas the Nuggets might be at 95% because they're tired. So I think in that case, the Thunder do win. I think it being at home is probably the deciding factor for me because though I do think the Thunder are the better team, I think the Nuggets are really matching up in difficult ways. And in a game 7, it's just so tough for either team. But I think being at home where the role players play a little bit better, you can feel a little bit better about, Jalen Williams, both of them, Chet Holmgren, Caruso, who's been really good this series, Dort, who's struggled throughout this series, particularly efficiency wise with 49% true shooting. And I just think there is that question mark of who the fifth guy is for the Nuggets because generally I feel great about Michael Porter Jr., but he's scoring about half his average from the regular season, 18 in the regular season to 8 in the playoffs, and 19 percentage points worse in efficiency from 62% to 43%. That's really rough. And I do not trust Westbrook, just as a general statement, come playoff time. But in this series as well, 46% true shooting, that's not good enough. A 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, that's just not good. And I don't think he's particularly good on defense either. So I don't trust the fifth for the Nuggets, and I think that's ultimately something that really could be their undoing. As I said, this is a pick that I don't feel super confident in, but if I have to pick, I'm going with the Thunder. Those are my thoughts for Game 7. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section, and also be sure to like and subscribe for more basketball and football content.